Hey, welcome back to another episode of Flavor and Fiction, and Happy New Year! Yes, you heard me correctly. Happy New Year. I get to say that because this is my first video of the year. It's the last day of February. I tried to sneak this in here so I wouldn't say that I missed 2 months. I'm going to try to be better at these. But for those of you tuning in for the first time, Flavor and Fiction is a segment where I read a book from my 2024 reading challenge, and then I make a recipe related to the book. So you get your flavor and your fiction. So this time the category was a book by a famous athlete. And I chose Undisputed Truth by Mike Tyson. There it is. And he mentioned a lot of foods in the book, but I chose donuts because he told this story about when he was a little kid and he and his friends would like run and steal donuts from the bakery. So I thought it was cute. So I chose donuts, and we're going to be making baked blueberry donuts. So I made this last week. I brought it in to my coworkers, and normally at the end of the video, you would see me do a taste test, but this time you're going to see my coworker Kevin do a taste test. But before we get to that, let's get into the book. Just in case you live under a rock and you don't know who Mike Tyson is, he is a former professional boxer who became the youngest heavyweight champion in history at the age of 20. He's been through a lot in the press, and there are a lot of headlines. Like from the outside looking in, you may think you know Mike Tyson because, you know, Evander Holyfield and going to jail and relationships with famous people. So you may know the headlines, but you really don't know the story until you know his story, until you hear him tell it, trust me. And with nearly 600 pages, and he includes some pictures in here too. That's him with Maya Angelou. He has a lot to say. He's lived a life. He's one of these people who's lived like 10 lives in one lifetime. Because right now, if you're following Mike Tyson on any platform now, he seems to be like really chill. Like he's still, when you see him like boxing, like sparring, you know that he's still got it. But you mostly see him like hear him on his podcast, and you know, just like he seems very chill and hanging with everybody. But that was not always the case. So when it comes to a memoir, I don't like to go through everything. Number one, it's impossible, and I don't want this video to be an hour long. But also, I like to discover things on my own in people's memoirs. But in general, I'll just say, you know, starting out with a very happy childhood until he was about 7, and they got kicked out of their home and they had to move to a new neighborhood. That's where things started to go south. He started running with the wrong people and got involved with a gang and started committing some like petty thefts and crimes at a young age. So eventually he was sent to a youth detention. And I'm only telling you this part because that's where he met a man who was teaching boxing to the boys to kind of give them something to focus on. And he was one of the few who showed real potential. So the guy who was teaching him, he was like, okay, let me make some calls. So he's the one who made the right calls and got the right connections. And that is how he got into boxing. So you know how they say that God can take something that was meant for your harm and turn it for your good? This is a great example. So what you'll really get from this book is a look at his inner walk with like low self-esteem mixed with like almost delusional confidence once he became famous. And those two things together create quite the inner battle in a person. He was taken advantage of so many times by so many people. And he's very honest about his mistakes and some of the crappy things that he's done to people or to himself. And, you know, like most of us know about Don King by this point, you know about his predatory practices to Mike, like stealing his money and taking advantage of him. But that was just one example. There were so many people around him in his personal and professional life that just were taking. They were trying to feed off of his money and his fame and connections. And it was just, I guess it would be hard for anyone, especially someone so young, to really be able to weed out who's for you and who's against you and the right decisions to make. And it was also fascinating just to get an inside look at some of these events that you've heard about, i.e. the Evander Holyfield ear incident, Because again, all you really know is headlines, and I remember when that happened, there was just so much craziness happening. But it's really interesting and eye opening to hear it from his point of view. Because I mean, many people would think like, "What were you thinking? What's wrong with you?" Well, read the book. My assessment is that he is incredibly thorough and transparent in this book. In fact, like I took a couple of breaks just because like I said, he's been through a lot and he lists a lot of detail, like things that he's been through and his thought process. And it took me a long time, not just because it's a long book, but like some of it is just very heavy. And I needed a little distance in between some heavy events. But in my opinion, 2 thumbs up. Do yourself a favor, make this your next memoir. It's also available in audiobook, I believe. Okay, so that's the book, my first book, 2024. And now it's time to get to these donuts. So I used, just so you know, I used like kind of smaller donut tins and a cruller pan, both provided to me by my coworker, Bill. Thanks, Bill. And here we go. We're going to start with our flour and then add in the brown sugar and the salt and the baking powder. And then we're going to mix up all of the dry ingredients, which is hard to do with one hand holding the camera, so forgive me. Then in a separate bowl, we're going to start with our wet ingredients. We have our buttermilk, and then we're going to add in the melted butter, followed by 2 eggs. And we're going to mix that up, again, one hand. And then we're going to add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients and mix that all up. And you don't want to over mix. You just want to mix till combined. Then you fold in the blueberries and it will kind of look like this. Then you want to put it into your greased donut pans. And you're supposed to do it by like putting it in a Ziploc bag and cutting the tip off and putting it in nice and neat. I just use 2 spoons. And like this is the other pan that my friend gave me that I'm calling the cruller pan. And I just dumped it in there with the spoon. It wasn't very neat. Here it goes. And put them in the oven for about 20 minutes or until they spring back when you touch them. And this is what they will look like. Now for the icing, we take our powdered sugar, we put in the vanilla extract and a couple tablespoons of milk. And then you want to whisk it all together until it's all nice and smooth. And then just dunk in your baked goods and it will look like this. Yummy!
It's soft and not too sweet. It looks like it's really gooey. It looks like it's really gonna be like really sugary, but it's a very nice texture to it, soft and sweet, but not too sweet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Very scrumptious.
I do like it.
Soft and just scrumptious. Good. A plus.
So as you can see, Kevin loved them and everyone else did too. They went really fast. I left and came back to the kitchen and they were half gone. And then I came back later on and they were all gone. So I'm happy about that. Because I'm not always sold on blueberry, but this turned out to be really good. So as usual, I'm going to put a link below where you can find the book and the recipe. And thank you for tuning in to Flavor and Fiction. I'll see you next time. Happy reading and happy eating.